There's a chance that right now, in this very moment, something inside is exhausted in a way that sleep hasn't been able to fix. And if that's true, what's about to be shared here wasn't found by accident. Something led to this message, and that something doesn't make mistakes. Here's the controversial truth that most people are too afraid to say out loud. The fact that someone is still waiting, still believing, still holding on to the dream of a real and God-given marriage doesn't mean they're behind. It means they're being prepared for something that requires extraordinary care to build. While the world rushes people into relationships that fall apart and calls it normal, God is doing something different with the ones who refuse to settle. And that difference has a cost that not everyone is willing to pay. The pain is real. The lonely nights, the quiet ache of watching others get chosen while the prayers keep going up. And every single bit of it has been seen, heard, and held by a God who has not looked away for 1 second. What's counterintuitive, what might completely reframe everything, is that the very fight that has felt so isolating is actually the evidence of a deeper calling. And the moment someone stops fighting it alone and places it in God's hands is the moment everything begins to shift. This isn't another empty promise or a feel-good message designed to temporarily numb the pain. This is a real, Bible-rooted revelation that has the power to change the trajectory of someone's life before this message is even over. Something brought this person here today, and it wasn't coincidence. It was a God who sees their pain, hears their cry, and has been waiting for exactly this moment to remind them that they were never, not even for a single day, truly alone. There's something deeply exhausting about carrying a burden that nobody else seems to see. So many people wake up every single morning with a smile on their face, go through the motions of the day, laugh at the right moments, say the right things, and yet, somewhere deep inside, they're fighting a battle that feels like it never ends. It's the kind of fight that doesn't show up on the outside, the kind that hides behind busy schedules and polite conversations. And what makes it even harder is that most people don't even have the words to explain what they're going through. They just know something feels heavy, something feels missing. And no matter how hard they try, that weight doesn't seem to lift. For those who are still believing for a God-given marriage, for a relationship that actually means something, this invisible battle can feel especially lonely. It's not just about being single, it's about wondering if anyone truly sees the depth of what you're carrying. And that question, left unanswered for too long, starts to do something dangerous to the heart. It starts with doubt. Not the kind of doubt that shows up all at once, but the slow, creeping kind that sneaks in during quiet nights and long weekends. It's the kind of doubt that whispers, maybe this just isn't for me, or maybe I've waited too long, or maybe God has forgotten about this part of my life. And the longer someone fights alone, the louder those whispers get. What's heartbreaking is that many people who are deeply rooted in their spirituality, people who pray, who believe, who hold on to the Bible like a lifeline, still find themselves caught in this emotional tug-of-war. They know what the Word says. They've read the promises. But knowing something in your head and feeling it in your heart are two very different things. And when the heart is tired, even the strongest faith can feel like it's hanging by a thread. That's not weakness, that's humanity. And it's more common than most people are willing to admit, especially in communities where showing struggle feels like showing failure. What makes this fight so isolating is that it often comes with a kind of shame that doesn't belong there. People start to feel like something must be wrong with them, like everyone else has figured out this part of life, except for them. They look around and see others getting chosen, building families, growing in love, and they quietly ask, "Why not me?" That question, when it goes unanswered, can slowly chip away at a person's sense of worth. But here's what's true. Whether it feels like it right now or not, the fight someone is in doesn't define their value, and the waiting season doesn't mean they've been forgotten. The Bible is full of people who waited, who struggled, who cried out in the middle of their darkest seasons, and were still deeply loved, deeply seen, and ultimately chosen for something far greater than they could have imagined. That same truth is still alive today, and it's still personal. The exhaustion is real. The loneliness is real. But so is the God who sees every single moment of it. There's a difference between being watched and being truly seen, and most people have spent so much of their lives being watched without ever really feeling seen. Watched by coworkers, by family members, by social media followers, but seen? Truly, deeply seen in the place where all the unspoken pain lives. That's a different experience entirely. And for someone who's been fighting quietly, hoping quietly, praying quietly, that distinction matters more than words can capture. The beautiful and almost overwhelming truth about God is that He doesn't just observe from a distance. He sees into the places that no human eye can reach. He sees the prayers that were whispered at 2 a.m. when nobody else was awake. He sees the tears that were wiped away before anyone else could notice them. He sees the moments when someone chose faith over bitterness, hope over despair, and kept going even when every logical reason to keep going seemed to disappear. That kind of seeing isn't passive. It's intimate, it's intentional, and it's deeply personal. The Bible doesn't just suggest that God is aware of human suffering. It declares it with certainty and with tenderness. In the book of Psalms, there's this raw, honest portrait of a God who collects every tear, who knows every sleepless night, who is near to the brokenhearted in a way that goes beyond religious language and touches something real. For someone who's been believing for a chosen partner, for a marriage that reflects something genuine and lasting, those words aren't just poetic. They're a lifeline. Because spirituality, at its truest core, isn't about performing faith when life feels good. It's about trusting that God's eyes are on you, even when your own eyes can't see past the next day. It's about believing that the same God who saw Hagar alone in the desert, who saw Ruth in her grief and her uncertainty, who saw Hannah year after year in her longing, that same God has not looked away from anyone who is still waiting and still believing today. That's not a small thing. That's everything. What shifts something deep inside a person is the moment they stop trying to be seen by the world and start resting in the fact that they already are seen by God. It changes the way they carry themselves. It changes the way they pray. It starts to quiet that relentless inner voice that says, "You're invisible, you're forgotten, you're too much or not enough." Because when someone truly grasps that God's gaze is on them, not in a judgmental way, but in the way a loving father watches over someone he deeply cherishes, the weight of fighting alone begins to shift. It doesn't always disappear overnight, but something changes. There's a steadiness that starts to grow where anxiety used to live. And that steadiness becomes the foundation for something new. Not just in the area of marriage and relationship, but in every corner of life that's been touched by the exhaustion of feeling unseen. The eyes of God aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for the heart that keeps turning back, keeps trusting, keeps showing up. And that heart? He sees it clearly. There's something profoundly vulnerable about crying out, really crying out, when you're not sure anyone is listening. It takes a kind of courage that doesn't get talked about enough. The courage to keep speaking into what feels like silence, to keep praying when the answers seem delayed, to keep believing when the evidence around you hasn't caught up with the hope inside you yet. And for so many people who are still trusting God for a meaningful marriage, for a relationship built on something real and lasting, That cry has gone up more times than they can count. It's gone up in church pews and in car rides home. It's gone up in quiet bedrooms and in crowded rooms where they somehow felt completely alone. Every single one of those moments was heard. Not eventually, immediately, not partially, completely. The God who created the human heart is not surprised by the sounds it makes when it's hurting, and he is never inconvenienced by the volume of someone's desperation. He leans in. He listens. He receives every word, every groan, every silent prayer that never even made it into full sentences. The Bible is remarkably honest about what it looks like to cry out to God, and that honesty is part of what makes it so powerful for real people, living real lives. Hannah wept so intensely in her prayer that the priest thought she was drunk, and yet God heard her and answered her in a way that changed her entire story. David, a man described as someone after God's own heart, filled the Psalms with raw, unfiltered cries of anguish, confusion, and longing. These weren't polished prayers. They were desperate ones. And that's exactly the kind of spirituality that connects with a God who isn't impressed by religious performance, but is deeply moved by genuine hunger. For someone who has been quietly wondering whether their prayers about love, about companionship, about being chosen by the right person are actually reaching heaven, the answer is yes. They're not just reaching heaven, they're being held there. Every cry that has ever been released in faith, even broken and trembling faith, has landed exactly where it was intended to go. What's even more remarkable is what happens inside a person when they begin to truly believe that their cry has been heard. Something softens. Something that was clenched tight out of self-protection starts to release. Because a lot of the exhaustion that comes with the waiting season isn't just about the waiting itself. It's about the fear that no one is aware of the wait. The fear that the longing has gone unnoticed, that the prayers have dissolved somewhere before reaching their destination, that somehow they've slipped through the cracks of God's attention. But that fear is a lie, and it's one of the most damaging lies a person can believe when they're in a vulnerable season of life. The truth, the kind of truth that the Bible builds its entire foundation on, is that God is not a distant, distracted deity who occasionally checks in on his people. He is present, he is attentive, and he hears. Every marriage that has ever been built on genuine faith began with someone who cried out first and then learned to trust that the cry was never wasted. There's a breaking point that most people don't talk about openly, but almost everyone who has carried something heavy for too long knows exactly what it feels like. It's not a dramatic collapse. It's more like a slow erosion, a gradual wearing down of the parts of a person that used to feel strong, hopeful, and resilient. And when someone has been fighting alone for an extended season, believing for a God-ordained marriage, holding on to promises that haven't manifested yet, trying to stay spiritually grounded while emotionally running on empty, that erosion becomes a very real danger. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows up in small ways first. A little more cynicism than usual. A little less enthusiasm when someone else shares good news about their relationship. A slight pull toward isolation, toward building walls instead of staying open. These are the quiet symptoms of a heart that has been carrying more than it was ever designed to carry, without support, without relief, and without surrender. What makes this danger so subtle is that many deeply faithful people mistake endurance for strength and silence for maturity. They tell themselves that a truly strong believer shouldn't need to lean on anyone, not even God, in a visible, vulnerable way. They push through. They keep performing their routines of spirituality. They show up to church. They read their Bible. They say the right things. But inside, the weight keeps compounding. And the longer they carry it alone, the more distorted their perception of themselves becomes. They start to see the waiting not as a season with a purpose, but as evidence of some personal deficiency. They start to internalize the delay as rejection, not just from romantic love, but somehow from God Himself. That's a dangerous place to land, and it's a place that isolation almost always leads to when someone is too proud, too tired, or too conditioned to ask for help. The enemy of the soul knows this, and he is not subtle about exploiting it. The Bible is incredibly clear about the cost of isolation, and it frames community, surrender, and dependence on God not as signs of weakness, but as the very architecture of a healthy spiritual life. Ecclesiastes 4:9 doesn't just suggest that two are better than one as a romantic idea. It presents it as a principle of survival, of resilience, of getting back up when life knocks someone down. And on a deeper level, the entire narrative of Scripture is a story about a God who refuses to let His people carry their burdens alone, who sends comfort, who sends people, who sends His own presence into the middle of the hardest seasons. For someone who is still believing for their chosen person, still holding on to the dream of a real and lasting marriage, the most dangerous thing they can do is decide to white-knuckle their way through this season in silence. The weight was never meant to be carried that way. And the good news, the life-changing, perspective-shifting good news, is that they don't have to carry it that way one more day. There's a word that gets misunderstood more than almost any other word in the life of faith, and that word is surrender. For most people, especially strong, independent, hard-working Americans who were raised to push through, figure it out, and never quit, surrender sounds like giving up. It sounds like weakness. It sounds like waving a white flag in the middle of a battle and admitting defeat. But that's not what surrender means in the context of spirituality, and that misunderstanding has kept more people trapped in exhausting, unnecessary fights than almost anything else. True surrender isn't about quitting. It's about releasing control of something that was never fully in someone's control to begin with. It's the moment a person stops trying to force an outcome with their own limited strength and starts trusting the unlimited wisdom of a God who already knows how the story ends. And for someone who has been striving, strategizing, and silently suffering over the dream of a God-given marriage, that kind of surrender isn't defeat. It's the most powerful move they can make. What surrender actually looks like in practice is different from what most people imagine. It doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. It doesn't mean stop praying, stop growing, stop showing up as the best version of yourself. It means releasing the grip of anxiety that has been wrapped around the outcome. It means choosing, deliberately and repeatedly, to place the deepest desires of the heart into hands that are far more capable than human hands could ever be. The Bible describes this in Proverbs 3:5-6, with an instruction that is simple in its language, but profound in its implications. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. That word "all" is doing a lot of work in that verse. Not most of the heart. Not the parts that feel comfortable surrendering. All of it. Including the part that is still quietly terrified that the dream of being chosen, of building a real marriage, of not being alone forever might not come true. That part especially belongs in God's hands. There's a peace that becomes available on the other side of genuine surrender that simply cannot be manufactured by willpower or positive thinking. It's the kind of peace the Bible describes as passing all understanding, meaning it doesn't make logical sense given the circumstances, but it's real, and it's stabilizing in a way that nothing else can replicate. People who have walked through extended seasons of waiting and come out with their faith intact almost always point to a specific moment of surrender as the turning point. Not the moment their prayer was answered, but the moment they truly let go of the timeline and trusted the one who holds it. That shift changes everything. It changes the way someone enters a room, the way they interact with potential relationships, the way they pray, and the way they see themselves. Surrender has a way of restoring dignity, clarity, and genuine hope to a heart that has been worn down by the relentless pressure of fighting a battle that God already won a long time ago. There is perhaps nothing more difficult to accept in the middle of a painful season than the idea that the delay has a purpose. It sounds like something people say to fill the silence, like a well-meaning phrase that looks good on a coffee mug, but doesn't do much when someone is lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering why everyone else seems to be moving forward while they're still standing in the same place. And yet, as uncomfortable as it is to sit with, the truth about God's timing goes far deeper than a motivational quote. It's one of the most consistently demonstrated principles woven through the entire fabric of the Bible. From Joseph spending years in a pit and a prison before stepping into his purpose, to Ruth navigating grief and uncertainty before finding Boaz, to Abraham and Sarah waiting decades for a promised child. The pattern is undeniable. God's delays are not denials, they are preparations, and the person being prepared is always more valuable at the end of the process than they were at the beginning of the wait. What's happening in the waiting season, even when it feels like absolutely nothing is happening, is actually some of the most significant interior work a person will ever go through. Character is being refined. Wounds that would have poisoned a future marriage are being healed. Patterns of thinking that would have sabotaged a relationship are being quietly dismantled and replaced. Spirituality is being deepened in ways that surface-level comfort never could have produced. The person someone is becoming during this season is precisely the person who will be ready to receive, nurture, and sustain the kind of marriage they've been praying for. God is not just preparing a chosen partner somewhere. He is simultaneously preparing the one who is waiting. And that dual preparation, that divine choreography happening on both sides of a story that hasn't fully unfolded yet, requires a timing that human impatience will almost always misread as delay when it is actually precision. The Bible makes it clear that God's ways are higher, and nowhere is that more personal or more relevant than in the area of love, relationship, and the dream of a lasting marriage. What shifts when someone truly begins to trust God's timing isn't just their emotional state, it's their entire posture toward life. They stop shrinking. They stop apologizing for still believing. They stop letting the calendar define their worth or their future. They begin to live with an open-handed expectation that is neither desperate nor indifferent, but grounded, rooted in the kind of faith that says, I don't know exactly when or exactly how, but I know who is holding this, and that is enough. And that posture, that quiet, unshakable confidence in a God who is working even in the silence, becomes magnetic. It draws the right people, creates the right opportunities, and positions someone to recognize and receive what God has been building for them all along. The wait is not wasted. The tears were not wasted. The prayers were not wasted. Every single piece of this season is being woven together by a God who sees the whole picture, hears every cry, and is crafting something worth every moment of the wait.